honored to have been given an opportunity to speak on the first day of this seminal colloquium. I've been urging, pushing, and at times rudely shoving from the sidelines for some years now in an effort to get the ISEE and now the DeGrowth Biennial Conference to be conducted entirely online. There have always been objections, even from those who agreed with me in principle. But we, of all organizations, must lead the way out of the old fly to a city paradigm of academic and professional conferences. It was clear that this was in itself a destructive part of the overall paradigm of how our species conducts itself on a finite planet. My closest allies objected that the human interaction over coffee, chance conversations in the hallways, etc., were reasons to continue with the old paradigm. I, in turn, argued that an unlimited number of side video chat rooms could be integrated for those attending virtually to interact in privacy and more intimately than in the hallways of some conference center. The lure of exotic destinations also played a strong part, I'm sure. If one's university would pay the expenses, why not fly to Puebla, Mexico, Reykjavik, Iceland, or Manchester, England for a paid working vacation? We're all subject to these subtle and overt lures and perks. However, in so doing, we have engaged, whether knowingly or unwittingly, in the complacency, as opposed to a conspiracy, of ignoring the effect our actions would have on the very survival of future generations of humanity. That is, our children and all of life on Earth. This willful avoidance of consequences is a terrible price that our children will have to pay, and we who grew up in the age of privilege could ignore for a few years more. Now, with the assistance of our tiny friend, the coronavirus, everything has changed. It cannot be lost on this esteemed audience that the global neoclassical economy and those who rule it, the central banks and their political pawns, are fighting stridently to send us back to the old growth paradigm. They seek to continue the neoclassical war against ordinary economics, as Nicholas Georgescu-Rogan put it. Their strategy will include resuming climate negotiations that bring tens of thousands of well-intended negotiators and observers from around the world to remote cities in an effort supposed to reduce our collective carbon emissions. This occurs despite it being amply apparent that there has been no reduction in the amount or even the rate of emissions since the Rio Earth Summit in 1992, out of which these negotiations arose. In fact, perversely, many nations ramp up their emissions in the years before seminal agreements are expected to be made so as to grandfather in higher baselines. My considered opinion, shared by many, is that the climate negotiations are a fraud being perpetrated on humanity as a cover for the continued growth economic paradigm. I believe this audience is more likely to agree than demur from my conclusion. I call it the annual ritual of kicking the can down the road. The one exception in all this time is the help our little friend COVID has given in disrupting the global growth economy. Now let me get more down to the nitty-gritty in my attack on the neoclassical status quo. It's not just the economic rule book itself that is the game plan for domination of humanity by means of wealth, power, and privilege. It's the very concept and manifestation of that which we call money. And here I use a capital M to denote money, since the term has many minor meanings, but one virtually unknown major one. Money is not just the stuff in your pocket or wallet, the medium of exchange, the store of value, or the claim against future production. Money is a viral meme. It is a body of law, custom, and tradition that passes itself from generation to generation and nation to nation. Money is a non-genetic virus of the human mind, a sort of cancer, like the genetic cancers, which does not realize that with its destruction of the host comes its own destruction. And like its physical cancer cousin, it seeks to grow as quickly as possible. Money has harnessed humanity for its own reproductive purposes. What do most of us do? We work. Why? For money. Look at that very statement. We work for money. It can be parsed in two distinct ways. We work so that we can receive money, or we work at the behest of money. Money has managed to write itself into law so that for most corporations, at least in the economically dominant nations, the prime directive is the financial bottom line, the maximization of shareholder profit. If there is a decision to be made that will preserve the habitability of Earth, such as the abandonment of tar sands, exploitation that despoils huge tracts of virgin forests for eons of time, but will reduce financial profit to the corporation, the CEO and management must, by law, make the decision against the natural world, the biodiversity of the area, and the rights of indigenous peoples who have cared for the land from time immemorial, but who bear no legal title to the land. Even should they bear title through some treaty with the European invaders or their descendants, the treaties are abrogated under the collusion between corporations and the supposedly democratically elected or appointed leaders. Money rules. Communist regimes like China and fake democracies like Cambodia need not go through the formalities of congressional or parliamentary abrogation. Cryptocurrencies do not solve anything. They just make the problem more intractable, removing from the light of day the passage of huge fortunes in a way that makes Swiss bank accounts irrelevant. They also permit further domination of humanity by the powers that would be masters. But even the masters are under the control of money. Even abominations like Donald Trump are under the complete control of the meme of money. Just think about it. He's been promoted to the position he's in by the meme of money, precisely because he's complete servant to his master. He can do nothing else. He's incapable of empathy, kindness, conscience, or compassion. He's the perfect servant of money. And it is his own enslavement to money and power that has driven the United States into the position of having about a quarter of all COVID infections on Earth, while the US population is well under 5% of the total population. I'll boldly assert that if humanity cannot change the meme of money and its neoclassical economic playbook, then we're doomed. We may already be doomed to societal collapse, but we may also be doomed to extinction due to the lag time between our destruction of the ecosphere and the resulting inability of humanity to grow food in the current frozen polar wastelands, which will gradually assume temperatures for half the year within which our species might otherwise survive. To clarify this point, the Summit supercomputer at Oak Ridge National Laboratories in the United States predicts a blue ocean event to occur in the Arctic within the next 3 years, and perhaps as soon as this year. This anticipated event will mark the flipping of the reflectance, or albedo, of the Arctic from net reflector to net absorber of incoming radiation. At that point, planetary heating will accelerate markedly. The inevitable result will be that the only habitable zones will become the extreme northern and southern latitudes, where rocky boreal forests have not developed sufficient topsoil for agricultural use. I'm not an academic per se, and I don't have a research paper to present. My work might be classified as observational science, and I refer to myself as an eco-social strategist and systems thinker. It's said that I'm a skilled communicator of complex scientific and technical information to open-minded people of moderate intelligence of all ages. I hope I've made some sense and left some lasting impressions in this highly intelligent and academically accomplished audience. Thank you for allowing me to present my considered observations, gathered over several decades, and the conclusions I've drawn from them. They are part of the legacy I leave behind, as I am suffering from a form of cancer from which I am told there is no remission. So besides the chemotherapy and dietary discipline, I am left praying for a miracle. In closing, I will express the hopeful prayer that we in the combined ecological economics and degrowth communities learn this lesson deeply and never again hold fly to a city conferences. When and if the age of COVID passes, local gatherings with low carbon footprints can provide all the contact we need, since indeed we are a social species. These local gatherings can be digitally connected to a hub, as we have amply proven is both possible and preferable. Again, thank you very much for my opportunity to present these thoughts.